I just want to say a couple of things before I get fully embellished into what I want to say. And the first thing I want to say is last time to liberate the BC and animals, and it's a wonderful event. I also want to give a little shout out to Luna, my partner, who made this film with me. She unfortunately can't be here tonight, but it was a working project we did both together, and it's really upsetting she can't be here. But a huge thank you to Luna as well. It's really important to mention at the beginning that a lot of the time when we see footage like this and we see what happens in these places, our automatic reaction is to feel angry at the people doing these things. We see the people killing the animals, and we see the farmers doing these things, and we think that they're the bad people in this situation. Now, undoubtedly, there are bad farmers and there are bad slaughterhouse workers, but for the most part, these people are just doing what they've been told to do by the consumer, by the people who buy these products. So if we look at these people and we say, who could do that kind of job? Remember that we're the ones paying their wages. And slaughterhouses, they know these jobs aren't desirable. And so what they do is they put these places and facilities in areas of impoverishment where there's not that many job opportunities, where people simply do not have a choice. People have their families to feed, their children to feed, and then often the slaughterhouses will put their wages slightly higher than the other jobs in the area, making them more desirable to someone who's desperate for that income. And consequently, these people, when they go and work in these jobs, they're expected to do something that's incredibly unnatural, incredibly damaging, which is why slaughterhouse workers have some of the highest rates of PTSD, drug and alcohol abuse, suicide, depression, anxiety, and a whole host of mental health problems. Because doing these things day in, day out, killing animals every single day, over and over again, has a huge psychological and mental toll that we probably can't even comprehend. It's disingenuous of society to expect these people to do these things every day and then take off their bloody overalls and reintegrate into society. These people have become desensitized to violence because they have to. They have no choice. And so we see them laughing, we see them doing these horrible things. Remember, these are not necessarily bad people. They're probably good people that out of negative situations and environments have been forced to do something they would rather not do, and as such we can't hold them entirely morally accountable because it's us, the consumers, that are paying and asking for these things to happen. And I want to start by saying that I wasn't born vegan, right? And I wasn't even born vegetarian. See, for almost 21 years of my life, I consumed animal products. I paid for these things to happen. And it's not just that I consumed these products, I absolutely loved them. I enjoyed how they tasted. I craved the flavors, the textures, the nutrition I got from these products. It was something I looked forward to. I did it every single day without any regard. I didn't think about it. I just did it because I loved it. In fact, KFC was my absolute favorite. I love fried chicken. In fact, I had a KFC about 10 minutes from my apartment, and I'd go there 2 or 3 times a week. I'd go there so often, the people who worked there knew me by my name and knew what my favourite order was, which was a Zinger box meal. So sometimes I'd walk through the door and they'd say, "Hi, it's good to see you again. Would you like the Zinger box meal?" I'd say, "Yes, please, as quick as you possibly can." I love this stuff. Domino's Pizza was my second favourite. I get 2 for Tuesday pretty much every week when I wasn't eating fried chicken. And I always get Texan barbecue, which was chicken and bacon. I'd always get meat feast, which are all the animal flesh products you could find. I'd always get extra mozzarella. I'd always get cheesy stuffed crust as well. I loved these products like a lot of us did. My name is speaking today to David. I loved them, and it wasn't really until a few things happened in my life that I became aware of the suffering I was perpetuating and asked myself some of the questions I will ask you later throughout this talk. Now, I used to love animals. I was one of those people that said, I'm an animal lover. I'd watch documentaries by David Attenborough, and I'd watch the lions in the jungles. I'd say, wow, isn't nature wonderful, as I was eating pig flesh. I went to zoos because it was one of my favourite things to do, because I was an animal lover. And actually, last time I was in Vancouver, maybe 12 years ago or so, I went to Vancouver Aquarium. And my mum said to me as we were going in, she said, "It's sad there's no orcas there anymore." And I was really upset by it. I was really gutted that I won't be able to see the killer whales jumping through hoops and jumping out of the water, because I was an animal lover. So why would I ever question these things? It was good to see these animals in zoos and in marine parks and on documentaries. Why would I ever question it? I mean, I used to watch these animals in their prisons and zoos, watch them pace up and down and say, "Oh my goodness, animals are beautiful." There was just a complete disconnect from what I was seeing or what I was feeling. Now, this all started to change for me 4 years ago. There was a big turning point in my life. And, well actually, let's go back 5 years ago. Because this really summarizes my mentality and my attitude towards these things. I was ordering pizza with a friend, and my friend was vegetarian. And I said to him, "Should we get bacon on the pizza?" And he looked at me, and he said, "No." And I said, "Why not? I mean, what are you talking about? You know, can you even call pizza pizza if there's no bacon on top?" He said, "Ed, I don't think animals should die for a pizza topping." I said, "You're mad. Like, we give these animals life, they're bred for that purpose. We give pigs life, the least they can do is give us bacon." I don't really have the Bacon is Life t-shirt. I was completely that kind of mentality. I probably walk past vegan protests and shout steak and bacon, or at the very least I definitely think those things. I think that vegans were weird. I did think vegans were weird and militant and extreme, and even just before I went vegan, I was like, these people are crazy. Like, what is wrong with these people? What sort of self-entitled attitude does these people have to demand that other people live the same way that they do? That was the mentality that I had. But this changed 4 years ago. I came across this story, and it was on the BBC News, this online piece. And the story was talking about a truck carrying 7,000 chickens crashing on the way to a slaughterhouse. And I remember reading this article. And it was really shocking to me because the journalist was saying that hundreds of the birds died on the impact alone. In total, 1,500 birds died on the impact alone. But that's not really what disturbed me the most. What disturbed me the most was that there was hundreds more. There were hundreds more of these animals who were alive, but they had broken bones, and broken wings, and broken toes, and broken beaks, and they were bleeding and suffering on the side of the road, but they were conscious, alive, and feeling that pain. And it caused me to make a very simple realization, so simple. I realized the animals that I consumed had the capacity to feel pain and to suffer, and therefore have a preference to avoid feeling these emotions. And I felt like a hypocrite. Because there I was feeling sorry for these animals, saying what a horrible predicament it is that they are there in that moment, but in my fridge behind me was chicken flesh. There was chicken breasts and chicken thighs and my KFC from the night before. And I said, who am I to feel sorry for these animals? And the only reason they were in that truck in the first place was because of the purchases that myself and people like me made. And so I had to ask myself some really, really hard questions. And the questions I asked myself were, how do I morally justify this? How do I justify this? On what level can I justify this behavior? I acknowledge these animals suffer. I acknowledge I am responsible for that. And I acknowledge that they don't have to suffer and die. There's no necessity for that. So how do I justify this action if it's unnecessary? And I couldn't think of a justification. And the second question I asked myself was, what do I value more? Taste or life? Such a simple question, but such a profound question. Because of course I said life. But there I was, paying for animals to die purely because I enjoyed the taste of the products that came from their death. And so I felt like a huge hypocrite. And I had to ask myself the third question, which is, what am I going to do about this? Do I make a simple change? Or do I bury my head in the sand, pretend to be willfully ignorant and go on about my day, trying to pretend to myself that animals aren't suffering and dying and being used for me? Now, I made a change. Unfortunately, that change was only to vegetarian because I didn't know about the dairy and egg industry, but later on, about 8 months later, I saw a documentary called Earthlings, and that changed everything for me because it talked about not just meat, not just flesh. It talked about dairy and eggs. It talked about clothing from the products that we wear every day. It talked about the cosmetics that we use on our face and our hair and our skin. It talked about entertainment. It talked about zoos and circuses and all these things. And I realized for the first time in my life the magnitude in which we cause suffering to animals is far greater than even many of us realize today in this room. Animal exploitation is permeated into nearly every single aspect of our daily lives, so much so that we don't even comprehend just how much we take animals for granted in our society. Now, I want to talk about the concept of an idea, a very simple idea, a notion. Now, if you have an idea, and you put that idea into society long enough, you create a societal norm. Now, if you keep pushing that societal norm, over time it forms part of society's culture. Now, if you pass cultures on generation to generation, over time they become tradition. Now, we only look across the world right now to see that culture and tradition are poor benchmarks for morality. Let's consider first off, let's look at human oppression first. Let's consider that in some cultures across the world, it seems acceptable to treat a woman as less than a man because it's a cultural practice. But we would never consider that to be moral. What about female genital mutilation, indeed even male genital mutilation? Both of these practices are traditional, incredibly traditional practices. They've been happening for hundreds, if not thousands of years. But is it moral to mutilate the genitals of a child? No, of course not. So let's realign this thinking, and now let's put it towards another situation where it's non-human persons who are being affected. Now let's look at the Yule Dogme Festival. This is an event that happens annually that causes a huge stir across the Western world. In Yule every year they have a festival where they slaughter tens of thousands of dogs. I think it's 10,000 dogs every year. They do so because they want to eat them. In Bocknell, every single year they have the Bocknell Dog Meat Festival, and they do the same thing. They kill tens of thousands of dogs and cats and kill them and eat them. Now both of these things are traditional events. They're cultural events. But do we consider them to be moral just because they are cultural? and they are traditional. And what about in Taiji in Japan, where every single year they slaughter thousands of dolphins? Is that moral because it's traditional? Or in the Faroe Islands, where every single year they slaughter thousands of pilot whales? Is that moral because it's cultural? But if it's not moral for other societies and other cultures to inflict pain and suffering upon dogs and cats and whales and dolphins, why would it be moral for us to inflict pain, suffering and death onto cows and pigs and chickens and sheep and the marine animals that we eat? Because after all of these animals are alive. They all feel. They all have the capacity to suffer. They all have an inherent preference to live their life. They all value their life independently like we value our own lives independently. So what right do we have? What right do we have? It always strikes me so funny. There was the Winter Olympics on the beginning of this year in South Korea, and people were up in arms about it. People were furious. People were calling a boycott on the Winter Olympics because in South Korea they had, or they still have, I think, a dog meat trade. Some of the athletes that went there went and rescued some dogs from a dog farm, which is a fantastic thing to do. And they were branded as heroes, as animal rights activists, as lovers of animals. But they went back to where they were training and they ate chickens and pigs. Why is it we have such a contradiction in society between animals that we love and the animals that we eat? All these animals are the same morally. Fundamentally, what unites all of us is what is most important. So what does give us the right? What gives us the right to inflict pain, suffering, and ultimately death onto a living being who wishes to avoid pain, suffering, and ultimately death? Now, the point of the film, and the point of what we're going to say to you, isn't to make you feel guilty, or make you feel judged, or to say that you're a bad person, you're consciously doing immoral things, because I don't believe that to be true. The purpose of the film, the purpose of what I'm going to say to you, is to hopefully make you question yourself and question your actions in a way that you've not done so far during your life. Make you ask the questions that I said before. What is more important, taste or life? How do we justify doing these things to animals if we don't have to? Now, one of the most commonly cited arguments that people use to justify their use and exploitation of animals is the notion of a food chain. Now, food chains are incredibly important. They are an essential part of an ecosystem because they help maintain natural population sizes. They help maintain the natural ecology of the areas in which they can be found. Fundamentally, they are vital to the survival of the ecologies in which they are found. Now, what we do to animals, when we selectively breed them, when we forcibly impregnate them, when we take their babies away from them, when we farm them, when we exploit them for their milk and their eggs, or even their flesh, when we load them into trucks and trailers, take them to a slaughterhouse where we hang them upside down and cut their throats, has nothing to do with a food chain. It couldn't be further detached from the natural order. It does nothing to help maintain ecosystems or natural population sizes of wild animals. In fact, it does the opposite. It destroys habitats. It destroys our environment. It destroys the world in which we are living upon, the one home we have. And as such, we cannot use the notion of a food chain to justify doing these things to animals, because what we do to animals cannot be further removed from a food chain. See, when we use the food chain argument, we're referring to nature. We're using a nature or appeal to nature fallacy. But the food chain we are citing is an entirely man-made construct, conveniently justified or conveniently created in an attempt to justify an act that is completely unnecessary. Now, as humans, we have something called moral agency. Now, moral agency basically means that we are able to make decisions based on a notion of right and wrong. Now, animals in the wild, like lions and tigers and bears who kill other animals, do so out of necessity. And as such, it's not very genuine or very truthful, or it shouldn't be very truthful, for us to compare our morality to the actions of wild animals who kill to survive, because they have to live. We don't have that excuse. And because we have moral agency, that means we have an obligation to make decisions based on a notion of right and wrong. But importantly, it also means that we can be held accountable for the actions and decisions that we make. Fundamentally, what this means is that if we go into a supermarket and we're faced with two options. Option one, a product that causes intentional suffering to a living being, and option two, a product that does not. We are obliged, through our moral agency, to pick the second option, because it's the option that causes the least amount of suffering. But importantly, if we still choose to take the first option, or take the first product, we can and we should be held accountable for that action. Now, sometimes people say that vegans are forcing their beliefs. That it's a personal choice to consume the beings who we consume. But really, let's think about it, because I went vegan for personal choice. I went vegan because I considered the personal choice of the trillions of animals who are killed every single year, who, if they had their choice, would want to live their life. If we consume these products and we claim to care about personal choice, whose personal choice are we actually caring about other than our own? And when we say that we force our beliefs, we're being to force their beliefs on others because we like to have conversations and show documentaries and do talks and encourage people to look at veganism, remember this, that you cannot force your belief any more than literally forcing someone else to die on your behalf. No one's ever been forced into being vegan. I can't police whether you go and buy tofu in the next purchase. I can encourage you to do so, but I can't police you to do so. But when you buy these products, you force an animal to live a life in enslavement, to be exploited, and to be killed on your behalf. How could you possibly force our beliefs more than that? Now, if I brought a live pig into this room, and I presented you with a live pig, and I said to you, who of you will kill this pig? However, there's a little caveat to that. You have to kill this pig using what you were biologically and naturally given. How many of you would be able to do that, do you think? You see, all animal eaters in the wild kill the prey they eat using what they're biologically given, which is their claws and their canines. But if I asked you to kill a pig using your claws and your canines, at best you'd probably give that pig a tickle, and pigs love belly rubs. Pigs love belly rubs. When you try to maul that pig apart, that pig would probably roll over and accept a belly rub off you. Now, sometimes people say that's fair enough then, but we have brains. We've evolved to have brains, which means we don't need to worry about having natural tools because we can create tools. My argument against that would be, well, why would we need to evolve and develop brains to be able to do something that we're supposed to naturally be able to do? And sometimes I say, well, are we naturally meant to fly? People say no. And I'm like, are you sure? Because we've built aeroplanes using our brains, so therefore naturally, biologically, we must be designed to fly as well, right? Let's take the same argument that you killed that pig. And now in front of you is the open carcass of that once living pig. They're butchered. They're open in front of you. Are you going to eat the meat? Are you going to eat the raw meat? Are you going to eat the intestines, the ligaments, the tendons, the brains, the feces inside the intestines? You're going to eat those bits. You're going to eat around them. Always strikes me strange when people see the abject reality of who it is they're consuming, they get put off their food. People often say, don't show me the documentary, don't show me graphic footage because it will put me off my dinner. Why? I don't understand. If you're naturally meant to consume animals, if it's normal, natural, and necessary, why should the process of witnessing what happens to animals for us to consume them put you off your food? It should make you hungry. You should salivate. You should be looking forward to consuming the flesh. In fact, you should be able to do the killing yourself. You should be able to be the one in the slaughterhouse cutting the throats of these animals, yet so few of us would want to do that. But why? I thought we were supposed to. I thought that was natural to us. Now, I sometimes see these stories in social media, indeed even in mainstream media, and they always tickle me. And they run along some lines of like, student finds dead piece of chicken in a chicken box. And this was a real headline. It's in the Huffington Post UK. It said, student finds dead chicken parts in their fried chicken box meal. And I'm like, well, I'm confused here, because what was he expecting to find? He went and bought like a fried chicken box meal, and he goes, hang on a minute, there's bits of chicken in there. The problem is he found bits of chicken he wasn't expecting to find. He found kidneys or brains. And it put him off his food, because in that moment, it wasn't just a boneless piece of chicken flesh that was battered and cooked up to appease his personal satisfaction. He saw something he didn't want to see, and in that moment he was forced to connect and make the realization that that animal had died for him as an individual. He could no longer hide behind the euphemisms of fried chicken. He could no longer hide behind the convenience of not having to witness the animal himself. He saw something he didn't want to see, and it put him off his food, so much so that he tweeted a complaint to KFC asking for a refund because he could no longer eat the food he bought. Let's say I brought a live cow to the and this time I'm going to be a bit fair, and I'm going to present you all with a freshly sharpened knife. And I say, who of you will take this knife from my hands and cut the throat of the cow here in front of everyone? Would any of you volunteer to do so? More importantly, let's say that someone does volunteer to do so. Let's say someone says they're going to cut the throat of the cow. How many of you would object? How many of you would turn away? How many of you would leave the room and pretend the cow wasn't about to die? Let's say you're walking down the road and you see a dog being abused and killed in front of you. How many of you would intervene and try to save the life of the dog? How many of you would at the very least call the police and try to save the life of the dog? Now say instead of a dog, it's a pig. Same situation. You're walking down the road and you see a pig being abused and killed in front of you. Do you still intervene? Do you still call the police and do you still try to save the life of that pig? Now say instead of being in front of you, the same pig has been abused and killed in the same way, but now it's happening behind a wall, in a building called a slaughterhouse, where you can no longer see it happening. Is it now moral in your eyes? If the killing is out of sight and out of mind, is it moral? Or is unnecessary killing always morally reprehensible? Even if we can't physically see the death happening in front of us, is the blood still on our hands if we are complicit in it continuing and being perpetuated? Now I want to do a little thought experiment. And the thought experiment goes, there's a cot next to me, and in the cot there's a baby. And with the baby there's a live bunny rabbit and an apple. Which one does the baby eat? And which one does the baby play with? Think about it this way. The FBI states that most serial killers began their life harming animals when they were children. Ted Bundy harmed animals when he was a child. Jeffrey Dahmer harmed animals when he was a child. How come leading criminologists and psychologists look at children who harm animals when they're young as being potential red flags for humans who may one day grow up to harm other humans? After all, a lion teaches their children to kill. A jaguar teaches their children to kill. A cheetah teaches their children to kill. Yet for some reason, we discourage our children from killing. Why is this? Why is it that in that cot, the baby picks up the bunny rabbit and took a bite out of the bunny rabbit, we'd all be appalled? Because let's remember that when the child grows up to become an adult, that's exactly what we tell them to do. Why is it that we become so horrified at the notion of a child hurting an animal? Now, if you put a child in a room, a 3-year-old child, and in the room you put them with a piglet and a toppy, that child is going to play with both animals in the same way. You see, when we're children, we don't see difference in species. We don't understand that one animal is supposed to be there for us to play with, and the other animal is there for us to eat. The parent, the adult, has to come in and say, no, I know they're both cute, but this one's for eating, this one's for eating. I was at a slaughterhouse in Houston, Texas, not so long ago. And at the back of the slaughterhouse were holding pens for the animals. And you could wander in, and you could see the animal, and you could even choose the animal who you wanted to have killed on your behalf. Now, as I stood by the pen, there were some goats in there. I watched a father and a child, maybe 2 years old, wander up to the pen of goats. The child saw the goats, and the first thing he did was he burst out laughing. He pointed to the goats, he hysterically laughed, big smile on his face. He was so happy. There was a cat there, a cat came from one of the neighbouring homes, who was just sat somewhere in the area. The child saw the cat, and he had the exact same reaction. He pointed to the cat, he laughed hysterically. He was so happy to see the animal. He saw no difference between the goat and the cat. But what he didn't know was his father was there looking into the pen, deciding which animal he was going to pay to have killed. And that night, that child who was laughing so giddily and hysterically at the animals was going to be eating one of the animals who he was so happy to see. Why do we hide the truth from our children? Because we know it will upset them, because as a child, we don't see difference in species. This is something that's brought about by the cultural indoctrination of the societies in which we live. Now imagine how much better this world would be if every child who was born from now on was taught the life of a chicken should be valued in the same way that we value the life of the puppy in their home, or indeed even their own life. Imagine if we taught every child the life of that chicken was equal in their right to life as we all are. And that if we don't have to harm them, then we shouldn't. It's a simple concept. If we don't have to cause harm, then we shouldn't. Now imagine if every child was taught the life of a fish in the ocean. A fish whose life they'll never meet. A fish whose life may seem inconsequential. Imagine if we taught that child that the fish should just be allowed to live that life. And we shouldn't have any right to go and take them from their home and consume them ourselves. Imagine if we gave the foundations of true peace, of true tranquility, and of true harmony to every child that's born to this planet. Imagine how much we could solve, how much oppression we could solve if we taught every child that all life was deserving of respect, no matter what form they were born into. Now, the animal agriculture industries know that what happens in these films, and what happens, truly happens in these places, is horrifying to us. It upsets us. It makes us angry, it makes us cry, and that's why they hide the truth from us. That's why they don't show you this on the adverts that glamorize and even eroticize the animal products that we consume. They hide that from us because we know, they know, we find it upsetting. And instead they give us marketing labels and scams and ploys and deceitful ideas and notions. One of the most prevalent is free range. Now when we go to a supermarket and we see a box of eggs that says free range on top, what we do is we attribute our ideals of freedom onto that box of eggs. Now freedom to us means living the life that we want to live, doing the things that come naturally to us. Fundamentally, freedom means living a life without fear, without pain, without oppression, without injustice. So when we see that box of free-range eggs, we say, those hens must have lived a good life. They must have done the things that came naturally to them. They must have lived without pain, without fear, without oppression, without injustice. But we know that's a lie. We've seen that that's a lie. We know that all free-range hens come from hatcheries where the males are macerated and gassed as soon as they're born. We know that free-range hens are debeaked and kept in barns that are so overcrowded that many of them will never even see the light of day. And we know that every single free-range hen will be taken to a slaughterhouse where they hung upside down and will have a knife pulled across their throat. Make no mistake, there is no freedom in free-range. It is a lie. It is brought to us to make us buy a product that if we knew the truth about, many of us would not be so reluctant to purchase. What about humane slaughter? I hear this all the time. It's moral to kill an animal if it's done in a humane way. Now, I could ask you, how do you humanely take the life of an animal? But I think it's good that we break this down. The word humane means having or showing compassion or benevolence. So instead of the question I just asked, I'd like to rephrase it and ask you this question. How do we compassionately or benevolently take the life of an animal who does not want to die for an unnecessary reason? You can't. Humane slaughter is an oxymoron. It can't possibly exist because we can never compassionately, benevolently, or humanely take the life of someone who values their life and who does not need to die. Another thing we hear is happy cows produce happy milk. Dairy farmers like to tell us this all the time. We look after our cows because only happy cows produce happy, good quality milk. I want to ask you a series of questions. And the questions I'm going to ask you relate to all systems of dairy farming. Local, organic, factory, makes no difference. The first question is the cow happy when she is forcibly impregnated? Is the cow happy when her baby is taken away from her? Is the mother cow happy when her baby is taken away from her? Is the mother cow happy when she's exploited for what she naturally produces by her child? Is the mother cow happy when she's loaded into a truck and a trailer? And is the mother cow happy when the bolt gun is placed against her head and the knife pulled across her throat? Again, make no mistake, there's no happiness in the dairy industry. There is no right way to do the wrong thing. And because we don't have to use animals, it will always be the wrong thing, which means there will never be a right way in which to do it. And sometimes people say, but Ed, look, I agree with you, factory farming is terrible, these things are terrible, using animals and killing them in this way is terrible, but let's just reform the system. Veganism is too far, it's too extreme. We don't need to do it. You can't expect everyone to go vegan. How about we just focus on changing the system and making the system better? The reality is, it doesn't matter what system of agriculture we have. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, that we have the land. So it's environmentally and economically sustainable to allow every single animal that we use to live out the life that comes natural to them. It's an impossible scenario. Can't happen. The reason we factory farm isn't necessarily because we're cruel. It's because it's the only way that we can meet demand from consumers in a way that's even slightly viable. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that that's not true. And we give all these animals big lush green pastures and they live out their lives in harmony. We will always, always, always have to take the life from these animals, which means that will never, ever be moral. Because using an animal for our own purpose, using an animal and commodifying them and seeing them as an object who produces for us can never be moral, which means it is irrelevant what system of agriculture we find or what system of agriculture we use. It will still not be morally justified. And welfare in real life is a scam. The UK is rated A for welfare, meaning that it's one of the highest rated countries in the world for our treatment of animals. But that's what A-rated welfare looks like. We banned factory cages for egg-laying hens. We gave them enriched cages, and people said that that was a heroic thing. The animals will live wonderful lives, but in reality they've got a postcard-sized more space each. Welfare is a lie. The only way to truly liberate these animals from their suffering and exploitation is to no longer use them, no longer consume them, and no longer exploit them. Now, what always strikes me is strange that we protest against something like the Earthling Dog Meat Festival. When we sign those petitions, we're not calling for the animals to be kept in bigger cages. We're not saying the animals should be labelled free range when they're sold. We're saying that the use of animals, the use of dogs, is wrong and immoral and should be abolished full stop. There's no ifs. There's no buts. There's no room for negotiations. We say the festival should be terminated, should be ended, and should be consigned to the history books and a disgrace upon our species. But why is that? Why don't we ask for bigger cages? So, if the Labrador steaks being consumed in Yulin, let's say they came with an SPCA-approved sticker, would that make it moral? Let's say that the minced chihuahua that was being consumed in Yulin, if that came with a high welfare, humane slaughtered sticker, would that make it moral? If we brought all the dogs and all the cats who are being killed in Southeast Asia, let's bring them to Canada right now, today, and we took them to Canadian slaughterhouses and killed them in the exact same way that we kill animals in this country, would that now be moral? And if it wouldn't, why is it moral to kill the animals that we kill using these methods and using these facilities, and not the animals that they kill? Let's say you have a companion animal house, say you have a dog, a cat, a guinea pig, a hamster, a rabbit, an animal whose life you love, an animal whose life you cherish and whose life you value. If they had to be euthanized, would you take them to a slaughterhouse to have that procedure performed? And if you wouldn't, that should tell you all you need to know about how humane a slaughterhouse can ever be. These animals have one life, one existence. What right do we have to take their one life away from them because we value the taste of their flesh and their secretions for a matter of minutes? A meal to us lasts a matter of minutes and moments, a single, very small moment in our time. Such a small moment is insignificant to us. A meal, once we've finished it, we almost completely forget about it entirely. But that one meal has cost an animal their entire life. What right do we have to do these things to animals just because we value the taste of what they produce for us? How do we morally justify this? What is more important? Fashion, taste, cosmetics, or life? Life, of course. Life is so much more important. The lives of these beings are so much more important than the things that we get from them. Now, as a vegan, I eat all the foods that I used to eat. It's kind of crazy to me because I thought I was going to be a vegan, I'd be sour and everything, but I don't. I eat mac and cheese and pasta base and lasagnas and curries and nachos and fajitas and tacos and burgers. I eat all the foods I used to love. I eat cupcakes and muffins and cheesecakes and chocolates and sweets and all the foods I used to crave. But now, the foods I eat don't have dead animals. They don't have exploited animal secretions. There's no gristle. There's no hormones. There's no antibiotics. It's just plants. So simple. Now, sometimes people say to me that veganism is restricted, and I say, well, that's funny because before I was vegan, I had one type of milk, cow's milk. And now I have oat milk and soy milk and almond milk and coconut milk and hemp milk and rice milk and cashew milk and macadamia nut milk. Going vegan encouraged me to broaden my horizons, and because of it, I cook with vastly more ingredients than I ever used to cook with me. What the hell is a legume, reason? What is a legume? Ask me 4 years ago, I'd say that it's probably something really weird and crazy. The legume, so beautiful. I cook with so many more foods and so many ingredients than I ever used to cook with. When I used to open up my fridge, I used to see dead bodies, just chicken flesh mostly, but now I open up my fridge. I see gardens, so many colours. I look forward to eating. I find it much more pleasurable than I ever did because going vegan encouraged me to broaden my horizons. Now, it would almost be so cruel if it wasn't true. Like, it would almost be ironic if it wasn't so cruel, but our leading diseases and illnesses, things like heart disease, certain forms of cancer like colon, breast and prostate, type 2 diabetes, Alzheimer's, strokes, osteoporosis, kidney failure, our leading diseases and illnesses can be massively attributed to the fact that we consume animal products. A simple switch to a plant-based lifestyle can not only prevent them, but can even reverse and treat many of them as well. There are people all over the West right now reversing and treating their heart disease and type 2 diabetes by making a simple switch. A switch from a meat-based diet to a plant-based diet. A switch from a non-vegan lifestyle to a vegan lifestyle. Now, the American Dietetic Association and the British Dietetic Association, which are the largest bodies of dietary nutrition professionals in both countries, have categorically stated that a vegan plant-based diet is nutritionally adequate, healthy, safe, and for all stages of life, including pregnancy. What this fundamentally means is that every nutrient and every vitamin that we need, we can acquire from a plant-based diet. Fundamentally, there is no reason for us to use animals. Sometimes I like to simplify this even further. And I say that the largest and strongest land animals that exist today on this planet, the rhino, the elephant, and the hippo, all have one thing in common. They're all herbivorous. And the hippopotamus, ironically, is the largest canines of any land animal that exists today. The largest canines belong to a herbivore, which kind of lays to rest the myth that our rudimentary blunt canines justify us to consume flesh, because the largest canines belong to a herbivore. How about a gorilla? Gorillas share 98% of our DNA, and apart from some of them consuming termites, they're plant-based. Now, I'm not saying that we're rhinos, hippos, elephants, or gorillas, because obviously we're not. But what I am saying is that we do not need animal flesh to live strong and healthy lives. There's a quote that says, "Man eats meat to be strong like an ox, forgetting that ox eats grass." So simple. There is no necessity for us to use animals. Unfortunately, doing so is destroying the only home that we have. Because animal agriculture is the leading cause of environmental degradation and the leading cause of many of the environmental crises that we are currently facing. It is responsible for more greenhouse gas emissions than the entire transportation system combined. It's responsible for up to 91% of Amazon rainforest destruction. It's responsible for ocean and dead zones, land desertification, topsoil erosion, fresh water usage, and crop usage. And scientists predict that by the year 2048, we may well have fishless oceans. The United Nations categorically stated that to avoid the worst effects of climate change, the world needs to shift to a plant-based diet. It's not a vegan organisation. It's not vegan propaganda. It's not a vegan activist. It's not pizza. It's the United Nations making a very stark warning that if we don't change the habits that we utilise on a daily basis, if we don't make simple changes as individuals, we will be the ones to reap the consequences of our inaction in the future. At the very least, our children and our grandchildren will be the ones to reap the benefits, or the consequences, I should say, of the actions that we make today. So the question is, what sort of world do we want to leave behind for the future generations of not just non-human animals, but indeed of humans as well? And so the question I've asked several times before is, what's more important, taste or life? But really, that doesn't summarize it. It doesn't even include all of the dilemmas that we're currently facing. The question should say, what's more important, taste or the life of an animal, the life of indeed ourselves as individuals, the life of our own species, and the life of our planet? Make no mistake, it is not a hyperbole to state that every single living being alive on this planet today and into the future is negatively impacted and affected by our use and consumption of animal products. So what is more important? The satisfaction and gratification we get from these products, the sensory pleasure we get from these products, or the future of all life that currently exists today? Animals, non-human animals, exist here with us, not for us. Their life is unique and as precious to them as our life is to us. And so I want to end by asking you this. With the abundance of information that we currently have, with the fact that we can get our phones out, our laptops out, and access information that's impartial and unbiased and shows the reality of what animal agriculture causes not only to non-human animals, but to humans and to our planet as well, do we have an obligation to seek out that information, to empower ourselves with the knowledge that's been hidden from us for many, many decades? With that information, do we therefore have an obligation to do something with that information? When you know better, you have an obligation to do better. We all know better now. So the question is, do we have to do better? And what does doing better look like? Does it mean carrying on the way we always have? Turning a blind eye to suffering, turning a blind eye to the objective truth? Or does it mean making a change and doing what has to be done today and every single day from now on? Can we no longer, or should we no longer, see our life as just for us and understand that every purchase we make, no matter how small and insignificant it may seem, has a long-lasting and profound effect indeed on all life on this planet? And if we take and we understand that simple realization, do we have to look at ourselves in the mirror and say, how do I justify this? What do I value more? And if we can't find a justification and we understand that life is more valuable, the life of an animal is more valuable, the life of our planet is more valuable, and our own life and the life of our children and our grandchildren is more valuable than the sensory pleasure we get from these products, do we have to ask ourselves, what's holding me back? And is it time for me to make that simple change? Thank you so much for being here and for listening. We have time for some questions, right? I'm just going to grab my water.
Yes, please, grab water. So we are going to open up the floor for some questions now. We do have limited time in this room, so please be aware that if we do not make it to everyone's questions, which I have an assumption we will not, there will be some time afterwards to have further conversation out in the lobby. So hands up if you have a question, and I will bring you a mic. Here you go, number one.
Hi, Ed. That was great.
Hi, Jeff. Thank you.
What would you like to say to vegans that don't get involved in activism?
The way I feel it is that, as vegans, we preach that we care about these things, and we preach that we care about these issues because we do care about these issues. But there's this idea that I came across before I became an activist, and the idea is that silence is complicity, and it's simply not good enough being aware of these things and no longer partaking them in ourselves. We have to actively show people the truth and encourage people to no longer partake in these things themselves, because if we're walking down the road and we see an act of violence, and we look at the act of violence but then we carry on walking, we're still complicit in that act of violence continuing because we've acknowledged it and we allow it to continue. Now, we know what happens to animals, we know what's happening all around us, which means that we are aware. And because we're aware, we simply continue to walk on and ignore it and think, well, I'm not partaking it, therefore I am no longer culpable. What we don't realise is that we are still accountable. So we have an obligation to be active, because if we were the ones in that situation, if we were the ones, the animals in these films or in these situations, we'd expect those who knew about our plight to care about us and to fight for us and to try and spread a positive change. So if we want that, if we would want that for ourselves, then we therefore have a duty to provide it for others who deserve it in the exact same way that we would deserve it. So being vegan is great, it's wonderful. But if we're vegan and we're confident in our veganism and we feel solidified in our veganism, we have to start speaking up and spreading it, because this world is on the brink of ecological disaster, on the precipice of a complete ecological collapse. And although animal agriculture is not the only cause, it is the leading cause. And going vegan is the simplest change that we can all make as individuals that has the biggest profound impact. And we don't have to look at governments or legislators or anyone like that to bring about the change, because the change comes from us and us alone. And that's empowering to know that we can bring about that difference. So we have to be active, because it's the only way to spread that change. We would want others to speak up for us if we were in that position, and because there's no more time anymore. There's no time left. We have to act now, and if we don't, even we in this room will be the ones to face the consequences. And the environmental collapse, antibiotic resistance, just all of these things, these will affect us as well. So please speak up when you can. You can be an activist in many ways. You don't have to do what others do. Just take every opportunity you have to speak up and spread the message and do what you can as an individual that's personally unique to you, because these industries are multifaceted and they have many dynamics to them, which means it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. We need every single approach coming from every different angle to try and take down this beast of exploitation. So please be active. Thank you, Jeff.
The movie's great, by the way.
Thank you.
I just want to know the difference. Do you know any difference between the UK industry?
Yeah. And Canada.
Yeah. Is there any difference between the two?
I mean, I don't like using the words better and worse in describing exploitation, because it's all equally wrong and should be abolished. However, like I said, the UK is rated A for welfare, which means it's technically one of the best. So Canada's technically legally worse. It has some of the worst animal protection laws in the Western world, or indeed in most of the world. So it ain't good, but it's the same practice. There are situations in the film that are obviously taken out of welfare and legal. When they're hitting the pigs with the poles or whatever, when they're kicking the animals, stuff like that isn't considered legal or anything like that. However, for the most part, the majority of the film is mutilations that are legal. It's forms of slaughter like gassing that are legal. It's maceration of chicks. All these things are legal and condoned, and all these things happen exactly the same here. And what kind of irritates me about Canada is, I guess it's the same in the UK. There's this very idyllic version of farming that people are given, and you have these big red barns, right? And I saw them when I was in Ontario a lot. These big red barns, and you think, wow, it looks so beautiful, like big, lovely, inviting red barns. But what happens behind those walls is the exact same, and the slaughterhouses is all the same everywhere. There's no difference. And yeah, you can say, look, America's this, America's that. We're all guilty and we're all culpable. And as I said, it doesn't matter how we do it, it's always wrong. So unfortunately, legally, it's worse than the UK. But the stuff that happens that's really important, everything in use, is exactly the same. It's a good question. I should address it. Thank you for your question.
Hi, I'm asking this question on behalf of my father, Andy Cossin. I'm saying his name so that he pays attention when he watches the video on YouTube tomorrow. He said, you asked the question, what right do we have to take these animals' lives? Well, we bred them, didn't we? And we took care of them their whole lives. So doesn't that give us the right? And isn't it better for them to have some experience, have some life? And even if it's killed prematurely, isn't that better than not existing at all in the first place?
It's a very good question. It's a question we get proposed with a lot. And the reality is this: like, if I was to go and say I was to breed some dogs, okay? So I have a male dog and a female dog, and I breed them together. And now I have puppies, and the only reason those puppies are alive is because I put the dogs together to breed them. that doesn't then give me autonomy over their life. And I don't then get to do whatever I want to those puppies and chop their tails off, kill them and use them. And I don't get to give them 6 months of life and say, hang on, well, I've given them a good life for 6 months and therefore justified to do these things. Just because we breed these animals into existence doesn't give us autonomy over their life, really. It's not a moral justification for us to do these things just because we physically breed them. The reality is these animals, we shouldn't breed these animals into existence to begin with. And the reason for that isn't necessarily because they don't deserve to live, but the reality is their life isn't natural. These animals have been selectively bred and modified, and the animals that we use either produce, excessive amounts of water. That means they have to have humans look after them. They produce excessive amounts of milk. They produce excessive number of eggs. They grow too fast. We've modified all these animals to an extent where they need humans to look after them, but they're not naturally occurring animals. And animal agriculture and the farming system is destroying habitats, destroying huge areas of our environment, and it's actually taking and reducing the biomass of natural animals whose lives should be allowed to live. So we need to no longer breed these animals into existence so that we can therefore allow natural populations of animals, deer, birds that we've eliminated, animals that we've hunted to the brink of extinction, and allow them instead to repopulate and retake over the land that's used for farming. And in doing so, we can introduce naturally occurring wild pigs, wild cows, wild chickens, animals that used to exist but who we've pretty much even taken to the brink of extinction, or we've reduced their numbers significantly. And in doing so, we no longer have these unnatural animals that we need human care, but we have all the naturally occurring animals whose existence we're almost forgetting about and ignoring because we don't necessarily see them in the same way, we don't acknowledge their existence in the same way. So I think it's an important question, and I see it, but I also think it's very disingenuous, because the whole foundation of that is, well, I'm doing a good thing, so therefore I'm allowed to exploit animals, but the only reason I'm giving animals life is so you can use them in the first place. You don't actually care about the animals, right? That's the bottom line, is you see them as a commodity and as someone who can be used. And so your mentality is very disingenuous. And I believe that if we want to progress into a society that looks to seek and abolish forms of oppression, the mindset that we have, which is the mindset that some life has higher value than others, is the mindset that we need to abolish, because that's the root of all oppression, human or non-human oppression. Is the root that some life has higher value than others based on superfluous notions of what form we're born into. And unless we rid that at every single step of the way, we can't progress as a society. So even if we give these animals 6 months of a good life, like theoretically we could if we reduce the demands to such a minimum, we're still using them. We still have that same mentality of dominance and dominion, and we still have to kill them, which is completely unnatural, because people aren't going to raise these animals and look after them if they can't take something from them. So I would say that I understand the mindset. It's a mindset I used to have. I think it's disingenuous, because when I used to say it, I was being disingenuous, and also it ignores the intercomplexity of our environment and how agriculture is destabilizing our world and eliminating naturally occurring wild animals. Thank you for your question.
Next question in the back.
Perfect.
Mike is over.
Thanks.
Thanks also so much for being here. You are a good presentation. My question is to do with many industry observers have pointed out that clean meat or lab-grown meat is really on the rise. And 2018 and 2019 is actually the year where the products are being commercialized. What are your thoughts on that? Is that an interim solution, or what do you make sense of?
My thoughts on clean meat. Yeah. So my thoughts on clean meat are that I'm really stuck in two minds about this. So on the one hand, I mean, clean meat. There's a way that we can reduce these products that doesn't cause any suffering to animals. We don't have to use animals, which can theoretically eliminate animal farming in its entirety. Brilliant. Okay, I'm totally 100% for that. Of course, that's wonderful. But I also get really annoyed by it, because it really frustrates me that we have to create something in a lab to stop people from abusing animals. Like, go into the supermarket and buy a bean burger and get on with it. That's not like how I normally talk, because I understand people's mentalities and stuff. It frustrates me, because people often say to me, I'm going to stop using animals when there's clean meat. I'm like, so you're going to wait? Like, if you acknowledge it's wrong, then do something about it today. Don't wait for a product that completely mimics the meat because it's the same thing. Just do it today. And the issue, and it's kind of related to what I was saying, just that question then, was if we want to progress as a society, we have to look at the mentalities and mindsets that we have. And clean meat is one of those quick shortcuts to solving an issue. It doesn't actually help in the long run, but it helps the animal. It's going to help our society so much in the long run as well, because we have to change the mentality. And if we want to live in a world that truly preaches peace and tranquility and harmony, we all talk a good game. We all talk a good game of wanting world peace. My stepdad, every year for Christmas, he said, what do you want? He says, I want world peace. Okay. And I'm like, brilliant, okay. But what are you going to do about that? Because you can't preach peace if you consume these products. And the thing is, we have to, so if we truly want a world where peace, harmony, tranquility, we need to progress as a species and change our mindset. Now, clean meat stagnates that growth because it's a quick fix to the problem, but it doesn't actually change the mindsets we have that some life has lower value than others. So people aren't going to switch to eating clean meat chicken because they think the life of chicken should be valued. They're doing so because they recognize that, it's better for the environment. Brilliant, that's really important as well. But it's also, better for they haven't made that connection that life is valuable. And if we want to really truly progress, we have to progress with that ethical mindset, which is why I always push for ethical veganism. The ethical mindset that eradicates suffering to animals. Humans are animals as well. So that means that a vegan world, in its utopian idealistic process, is a world where there's no exploitation to anyone, which is a world about famine, a world about homelessness, a world about child poverty, a world about these things. But clean meat doesn't address all these issues because it doesn't change that mindset, so it stagnates us in our growth, and that worries me. I welcome it with open arms because it means it's better, because it saves the environment in many ways, and it saves trillions of animals from suffering. But I'm worried about what it means for our future if we stop a whole progression of consciousness that we need to desperately undergo. Thank you for your question.
Okay, so we're going to take one last question, and then we need to wrap. But again, please feel free to stick around afterwards in the lobby and continue discussion.
I can speak quickly.
Thanks. I'll make mine quick. Do you know if in 2018 consumer trends have led to a shift in the marketplace?
Yeah. Absolutely. The whole system works on supply and demand. So fundamentally that means that consumer demands a product, the industries will supply it. So when we stop buying certain products and we buy other products, we demand other products be produced. Now this is a very tangible effect. Let's say for instance, there's a statistic from the US. It said in 2014, 400 million fewer animals were killed in that year compared to 2007 in the US alone because the consumption of animal products had dropped. And the tangible reality was there's 400 million less animals being bred and killed because of that. So the supply and demand chain is incredibly profound, and it's one of the few times we can use that consumerism to our advantage because the only reason any of these places sell the products they do is because we ask them to with our purchases. So every purchase we make of plant milk and vegan meat, whatever it is, even just produce, fresh produce, organic produce, whatever it is a demand for more of that stuff to be stocked. So it is very tangible. In the UK, the sales of these products are skyrocketing. We have in our mainstream supermarkets, we have vegan ice creams, we have vegan steaks, we've got vegan everything now in our mainstream supermarkets. And the consequence, or the reason why, is because people are buying them. The supermarkets ain't going to sell them if people don't want them. So every new product we see is a very much a tangible reality. The supply and demand is in effect, which is why it's amazing that every purchase we make is voting for a different world. And we have, what world do we want to vote for? A world of violence or a world of non-violence? That's the question we have every time we buy a product. So, yeah, good question, very important point as well. Thank you for it.
Hi, thank you so much.
Hello.
Hi, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So I'm asking this on behalf of some family members that I'm living with. They consume more dairy than any meat there is. So, and they will say like, well, I need to consume dairy because I have osteoporosis.
Yeah.
Because I have osteoporosis and whatever. And, oh, my doctor says to consume dairy, consuming it because then I'll cure my osteoporosis. And it just kind of keeps going on and on and on and on and on. And so, what is the whole health aspect with like eggs, honey, meat, dairy?
So I'm going to do this quite quickly, but there's abundance of information online that I would ask you to look at. There's actually a link between dairy consumption and osteoporosis. In fact, animal product consumption and osteoporosis. And the reason for this is animal products are acidic by nature. Our body operates on an alkaline level. So when we have these products go into our body, it forms sulfuric acid. Now our body needs to neutralize sulfuric acid. And the way it does that is it leaches calcium and phosphorus from our bones. What our bones are made from calcium and phosphorus, right? Calcium phosphorus. And what happens is we urinate the calcium out and the phosphorus or phosphate, which neutralizes the acidity. So we actually urinate out a lot of the calcium, which is why increased animal product consumption is related to increased demand or increased levels of osteoporosis. Now, the countries with the highest rates of osteoporosis, I think it's, Israel, Sweden, the US, and the UK, I think Finland's maybe done that, but those countries also have the highest rates of osteoporosis. And the countries that consume the least amount of dairy, proportionally, looking at Japan, that consume a lot of soy and stuff like that, also correspondingly have some of the lowest rates of osteoporosis. So if it was true that dairy was an alleviator of osteoporosis, then how come osteoporosis is such a problem in our society? Because so many of us have consumed dairy products. There's also other issues looking at magnesium as well, magnesium absorption, how pasteurization of dairy products leads to a lot of nutrients being killed, how there's a lot of other issues in there as well, but fundamentally from what I've learned, that's the main problem. Our products are acidic, we have to leach the calcium phosphorus from our bones, we urinate the calcium out and the phosphorus neutralizes the acidity. But please, there's an abundance of information out there. Fox Over Knives is wonderful. What the Health is good as well. Check out these documentaries, have a look yourself and find out, because it's alarming and it shows the extent of which we've been lied to and how dangerous this is. And the beautiful thing about plant-based sources of calcium is the calcium is wonderful, just as good as any calcium you get from animal products, but it also doesn't come with the baggage of having cholesterol and trans fat. It doesn't have IGF-1 promoting cancer-forming hormones. It doesn't have antibiotics, it doesn't have hormones. It's just dark leafy green vegetables, for goodness sake, which are amazing because they've got vitamin K and iron and potassium and all those other wonderful things that our body needs to thrive on. So we have this issue, we look at animal products and we go, it's great if we can get protein from animal products. We can also get B12 from dog feces, but we're not going to eat dog feces. Just because a product has things in it that we need doesn't negate all the negatives. And the plant-based alternative have all the things that we need, but they also have all the negatives that are killing us. They have lots more positives. So let's not stop looking isolated at the products that we want from an animal product, and understand that there's a whole package there that we need to deal with. Plant-based products don't have that package. So let's just eat plants, live healthier, and hopefully reduce osteoporosis. Thank you for your question. I hope that helps.